Well, whatever you had to do to get ready for this one, it was worth it. As a matter of fact, if anybody hasn't watched this show yet, if you just want to, as soon as Christian and Jungle Boy get finished, if you want to get ready for the main event, take about 2.5 hours. At first, I thought Jim Herd was running AEW when I saw the string quartet and the orchestra and everything with the mask to come out and play MJF's music. I know they were trying for a big moment there. I don't know about that one, but MJF comes out. He looks great. He's got great looking gear now. Remember, I mentioned early on the designer scarf alone probably didn't, present the whole image. But now he's got great looking gear. He's got the devil mask. He came out. He's in incredible shape. And again, we said this was going to be a challenge. The one thing they did do was not put these guys on at midnight, whether local time or even Eastern time. They had some restraint there if they didn't have any restraint in terms of what people did in the matches beforehand. But this was what we were hoping it was going to be. They wrestled. Danielson's so smooth with the wrestling, the holes in the count, out wrestling the heel and showing that that's his strength. And MJF knows exactly how to heel and to get heat from the crowd for even rolling out or backing up or powdering. But what they did took athleticism and took talent as far as psychology and timing and working that was not on display in most of the rest of this event. And MJF bailing to the floor and throwing the water on the kid. Oh my God. And what boos it got.
Well, this became a big deal.
I heard that from the scrum afterwards. I heard that it became a deal, and it was fucking classic. It was fucking great. And he said to the camera, is this going to cost me a star, Dave, when he was stalling? And he got heat by slowing it down like the heel would because Danielson is too good of a technical wrestler. But then they told the stories that Danielson has the bad shoulder, so naturally MJF is going to start working on that. But at the same time, MJF was able to do that wild fucking flipping cannonball thing and land on his feet, but supposedly sell his knee. So is his knee bad or not? We don't know. And I was amazed also because everybody, like MJF said, I think at the scrum, he said, everybody thinks I don't do all this shit. Well, I do it. I just do it when it's necessary. Because he did that hammerlock DDT that looks fucking wicked on a guy that's had concussion syndrome. But here's where I realized they're not even halfway through this match. Can you imagine, as good as already they had some chemistry with each other, if they had actually been in a normal company and been in the employ of a normal booker, and the first match that they had with each other with just a regular world title match, maybe it didn't have any time constraints, and maybe MJF would fuck Danielson in a one fall match in like 30 minutes, and then Danielson would challenge to this. Or maybe they would even go for a fucking goddamn hour the first time. And then say, well, how about most falls in an hour? Whatever, but something where we didn't just come into the middle of the movie with the first time the two guys are ever in the ring, they're going in an Iron Man match, most falls in an hour.
And I love the match, and we'll talk more about that later, but because of what it was, I don't want to see another match, even though I do want to see them wrestle more, if that makes any sense. Like you said, I wish there was a series of matches or something leading into this, because I'd like to see more of them in the ring together. They're great together.
With no time constraints in a regular match, they could have had a classic first match because they could do whatever they wanted. And then they could have had an even hotter marathon match for the rematch in number 2 because they would have set it up. But nevertheless.
See, the problem is, like, in 10 years or whatever, some kid discovers AEW and they want to go back and discover more about AEW history, and they look at the card for the show and they see MJF, the champion, versus Danielson, 1 hour Iron Man match. He'll say, okay, why was it that match? And there's no answer. Like, it'll just be, well, it's just because. Just because.
Because Tony wrote it down. So they did the World of Sports style rolling pin attempts and the roll-throughs and a double bridge in the middle. Got a great reaction because they had a great pace going. And then they did the big clotheslines and a long sell, and then Danielson hit his knee, boom, and 1, 2, 3, and got the first fall, 25 minutes in. And then Danielson sets up where he's going to hit him with a second knee, and MJF collapses. Was it on purpose, or was it he was just fatigued? We don't know until he nut shots Bryan Danielson and gets disqualified. And that means now Danielson has 2 falls, but he's been nut shotted. And there's no rest period in a marathon match, like there is in a Texas death match, if they had actually done a Texas death match. So MJF gets 2 quick covers and 2 pins on Danielson while he's selling the nut shot. So now they're even 2-2. And it was, again, a smart spot. I have not seen that done in a previous Iron Man or marathon match. So that was very heelish, and then MJF rolls out, and he keeps going for the water break. And I thought something was gonna come from that, like even, the water bottle was gonna figure in. But anyway, they at one point they were awfully long on the floor. I must call it out, but to be fair, Danielson was at least breaking the count, and they kept things moving. And then Danielson's back in charge, and he wraps MJF's bad leg around the post, and they had a long back and forth on the apron, but at least they were laying it in. And then they did a table spot. And, I guess Danielson is the guy that can do the modern stuff, the fighting on the apron or the breaking the furniture or whatever, but he knows how to do it and how to bring it up and how to time it to where it's not preposterous. They show the effects. They sell long enough. They're not just popping back up and running and doing more flips. So it does have some type of dramatic effect when it's done right, still even yet. And plus, what a fucking elbow drop off the top rope through the table on the floor. So, and then MJF took him back out and did a tombstone on the broken table on Danielson, but hurt his knee. And he couldn't try to cover, so there was no, kicking out of this shit. And Danielson, by that point, is bleeding from the head, and MJF is squeezing it, which is another reason why Page and Moxley should have never happened, along with just common sense and respect for the business. And then MJF hit his heat seeker at 1, 2, 3, and now it was 3-2. And then he gets on Danielson viciously, and they're past 40, and they're doing a great job. And then at that point, they actually work the people. How long has it been since you've seen somebody in AEW actually stop and take time to work the fucking fans that are there? And MJF's trash talking Danielson, and he's ripping his face, and he's toying with him, and he snots on him. And then Danielson turns things around and reverses it and posts MJF and gives the big knee off the apron and off the top to the floor with a double sledge and hits the diving headbutt. And I believe that was where MJF got busted open, and he starts bleeding like a stuck hog because Danielson was just, I think, dinged a bit, but MJF is bleeding like crazy. And now, at this point, I wrote Moxley versus Page as a crime against their business. And Danielson hits the knee and gets the label lock, and MJF taps. Now it's 3-3. And he's trying to make him tap again. And MJF came out and got the armbar, and they worked that a long time. And finally, Danielson got a foot on the ropes to get out of the hold. He got a big pop because they milked it and they worked it. And they did the yay boo punch exchange on their knees, and they stood up and they had a drunk leg exchange, and the fans were standing and applauding. And big trades again, another heat seeker, 2 count. And they hit they had the fight on the top turnbuckle, and MJF, at Jesus Christ, Again, this was stretching it, but MJF hits a perfect tombstone piledriver off the second buckle and immediately sells his fucking knee like he's broken his leg, and both of them sold like they were dead. There was no cover to kick out immediately or to, even though, yes, Danielson's neck should have been broken. We're taking this ride and they're doing it well. And finally, MJF crawled over and covered and got a 2 count. And then Danielson turned it into a single crab and he starts cranking it. And there's a minute left and MJF's getting toward the ropes and Danielson pulls him to the middle. And there's 30 seconds and MJF is milking the tap and holds on. And the bell rings and it's a time limit draw. 3 falls to 3. And at that point, the doctors come in and start checking on both of them, and they give MJF the oxygen. And I thought that, I said, God damn it. The oxygen tank would have been perfect. And you remember that from Los Angeles, right? What, in the early 70s? Who was it? The point is that in Los Angeles in the early 70s, there was a deal where they had the Texas Death or the Gladiator match or whatever it was that had gone so long, and the heel finally reached under the ring and brought out an oxygen tank and took a big hit of oxygen and then ended up fucking the babyface. And I used that in Knoxville, in Smoky Mountain. The Heavenly Bodies and the Rock and Roll Express, the only time I ever booked a marathon match, most falls in an hour. And it was in Knoxville, and they went 59 minutes or whatever the fuck it was, and everybody was down, and Hildebrand was distracted, and I reached and gave Tom Pritchard the oxygen tank, and he fucking took the big hit of oxygen, and I think then he loaded his boot and kicked Ricky Morton, and we won in the last 10 seconds.
You know what I thought they were going to do here? I thought somehow the match would get restarted.
Right.
And then I thought they would say, MJF says that he has to go to the bathroom. He's been drinking all this water all match. We've all seen it right in front of the camera. He's willing to continue the match. He just needs a few minutes to go to the bathroom. And then whatever he does in the back, he loads up for whatever he's going to do in the ring.
Well, fortunately, they didn't do that because it would have probably lagged by the time he went back there. But basically, Tony Schiavone gets a call at the desk, and he goes down to the ring, and you can kind of hear him telling the announcer what's going on. And Smiley Roberts says, Tony Khan says this match will not end in a draw. It will be restarted. Sudden death, 1 fall to a finish.
That's the way to use Tony Schiavone.
Yes.
Although it shouldn't be to just get Tony Khan over as the babyface. It should be as the official for AEW, making sure there's some sort of rules. That's exactly how to use Tony Schiavone.
Because he's a big stooge anyway, so he goes down and stooges everything off, makes it right.
Bingo.
But anyway, they trade the roll-ups and the 2 counts, and MJF gets the title belt, and the referee says, go ahead, I'll disqualify you if you use the title belt. So while the referee's putting the belt out, MJF pulls out the ring, but swings and misses, and Danielson gets some kind of Hurricane Rana and a knee and a 2 count. And the crab, and while MJF is in the crab, the referee takes the ring off. And MJF just makes the ropes and then taps. And Danielson heard the tap and thinks he tapped. And while the referee's explaining that, they did use the oxygen tank after all, just not in the same way. MJF rolls to the floor and gets the tank. And when Danielson leans out, MJF hits him over the top of his head, boom, with the tank. And he falls in the ring and gets MJF rolls in, gets the label lock on Danielson, and Danielson's already out. But he fires up at the 3rd arm drop, and the people come up, and then he taps. Oh, my God. The only thing I would have changed this whole thing is the heel just fucked the babyface. He's been hit over the head with a metal oxygen tank. The 3rd arm drop, yes, we established it earlier on in the night. Maybe they did that for that reason, but goddamn, he fires up and then taps out. All righty then. But otherwise than that, what a fucking job. And again, it's not that MJF doesn't do all the flips or the moves. It's just that he only does them when you should. And so somehow from that, the trampoline fans have, he doesn't do anything. No, he just does what he should do, not what he shouldn't do. That's the fucking difference. They're not used to it. What a fucking match.
One of the best matches in AEW history. I think it's the best Iron Man match. This may upset some people, and I know it is now a mythological match in a way, but I didn't really like Bret and Shawn in the Iron Man match. It bored me at times.
It was not their best.
This never bored me. The story, the injuries, everything happening, it kept moving. And before I knew it, 40 minutes had gone. The spot where MJF gets disqualified for the nut shot and then gets the 2 quick pins on Danielson was fantastic because of the crowd reaction.
Yeah.
The crowd reacted like, oh shit, like no one expected that. 2 quick falls like that. That was great. Both guys here. This is the best Danielson performance. I hate to use that word. Sorry, Jim, but best Danielson match.
Well, no, but you can, in an athletic in an athletic context, you can say, an NBA All-Star, what a performance in the game with 36 points or whatever. That doesn't bother me.
This is Danielson's best performance in AEW, I think. And he's had good matches. I like the one with Kenny. I like the ones with Kenny, I think it was, and then him and Paige. But this was the best thing. MJF, we'll talk a little bit more about in a second. This reminded me, there's always a clip I think of, and I don't even know the exact match, and I'm sure you do. But it's Dundee as a babyface, Lawler as a heel, Mid-South Coliseum, shot from the floor, and Lawler's just slugging Dundee.
That was the 1977 match.
You could see the exhaustion. You could see it. And with this match, you just felt like these two guys, it didn't just feel like two guys going through the motions for an hour and doing the moves for the hour. Even when they did the spots that, whatever you want to say, Billy Robinson and Tony Charles or Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko, the rolling pin combinations, it worked. These two guys were great together. It just felt like a big deal match, and it was. The heel cheated to win, as they should. This was an incredible match, and then I said we'll talk about MJF. This guy gets no credit. He said it during the press scrum, and people think, you never know what's gimmick and what isn't, but it's true. This guy gets no credit. He stole the show pay-per-views ago, him and Darby in the opening match, and the Young Bucks street fight was the one that got the 5-star rating all of a sudden. But there's been pay-per-view after pay-per-view where it's not just the promos. We don't get to see enough of him. Well, I shouldn't say that. We see enough of him to appreciate him when we see him, but because we don't see him all the time, it's easy to forget. Every match this guy has in AEW has been a fantastic match.
Yeah.
And in the conversation for who's the best wrestler in the world, we just talked about it for 2022. If MJF has a series of matches like the ones he's already had as the AEW champion for this year, and Roman Reigns works that kind of schedule anyway for WWE, then more people need to pay attention to just how good this guy is in the ring. Because he's a special wrestler. He does the moves, but he does the stuff that you don't even know how to describe it, the little things that Piper did.
He does the shit that he should be 20 years older to know how to do. Because nobody his age has been able to get it, pick up on it, whatever, and he does. And that's what makes him different.
This was a 1-hour Iron Man match in front of a crowd that could have gone either way. It was a long night. They've already seen a lot of brutality. They got to see the entire Buck show, and that match went forever. The Moxley stuff, that wasn't just gory and gross. That went forever. This was all the way at the end of the night. They had the crowd in the palm of their hand. This was a masterclass. Again, I know there was some things you would change. I'm not saying there aren't some things I would change. It was a long match. But these guys put on this was a hell of a match.
Yeah. And again, where do you go to? So now the very first match that they have has seen the heel beat Danielson at his special match that he asked for. So then where do you go now? It's supposed to be the guys have a regular match and the heel cheats. And then the babyface asked for his specialty. And then it would be harder for the fucking heel to cheat and win. And maybe he does it just by the nick of his, the skin of his teeth or in the nick of time or whatever, but it takes everything he can do. But where do you go when this was the first match? I don't even understand what.
I don't think you go anywhere. That's the thing. Remember in the early days of AEW, we talked about it. There were never follow-up matches. There were never rematches. It was always one-offs that were big, that people got into, and then everyone just kind of went their separate ways.
Okay, if you have 18 top main event singles stars, you could do that. But he's got 3, maybe?
Well, we'll talk a little bit about MJF at the press scrum because he mentioned some potential opponents, but I do have to ask you one thing. Several times during this match, it was audible. You could pick it up, even though you had 3 people talking during this match. He would yell out that he's the best in the world. Obviously, that's something that Bryan Danielson called himself years and years ago in Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
It's also something that CM Punk called himself just recently in AEW.
Yeah.
Anything we should read into that?
Well, a lot of people like to call themselves the best in the world, and it's gotten to be somewhat of a cliche, but it does seem that if they need main event level single stars badly, and the current world champion is crowing at the top of his lungs that he's the best in the world, well, if they were smart enough to contact CM Punk and ask him to come back to work politely and nicely, well, you just know he'd have to say something about that, don't you? And as I recall, CM Punk and MJF have already met once, already had a little program that got a lot of attention, and they had a great match. And I wouldn't call the issue settled between them because of things that have gone on since then and what position MJF is in now, so they could pick that thing right up and run right along with it, couldn't they?
You know what I like about that, too? As opposed to most of what we see with MJF's feuds. We just saw it with Danielson. With Punk, I don't think MJF needs to run away. This could be the fight that MJF wants.
I agree with you as I'm swallowing my Sprite. You just put a period on that very quickly. So I had a mouthful there. You said a mouthful, Brian.
Indeed.